Please remain standing while prayers are said.
Let us pray. God of all creation, as 2018 draws to a close, we thank you for this day and the many blessings we have received. We thank you for the people with whom we have been in contact, our family, our friends, and strangers. We thank you for the ability to use our minds to discern your will and to create a strong and healthy community. We thank you for our community and all who serve it, for those who teach and those who protect, for those who clean and those who repair, for those who work in parks and those who work on roads, for those who plan and those who make plans happen, for those who heal and those who counsel, for those who govern and those who elect, for all who live as the best example of what it means to be a citizen. We thank you for our community. We pray that those who are hungry and unemployed, for those who are mentally or physically ill, for those who live in violence, for these and for all our community, we pray. At this meeting, I pray for each person here today. I pray that they may be given clarity of mind, creativity, compassion, integrity, and a sense of humour. Give them presence of mind and an open heart. This I pray that they may have peace, love and joy, both now and in 2019. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, for those who weren't in when I mentioned before, there are cards on your desks. Please don't do anything with them. They're to allow the IT people, if needed, to reset mics. And when you're using the mics, if you only press the silver buttons rather than the screen, you're unlikely to log yourselves out. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Are there any apologies, please? Received. Yes. Thank you. Any further apologies? Okay. Thank you. Any further apologies? Councillor Stone. Okay. Are there any declarations of interest? If not, item 3, Salford City Council electoral review, warding patterns, supplementary response. Deputy City Mayor, please.
I've just been asked by the Mayor to be quick, actually, in moving that, which I found a little ironic, but nevertheless, I'm going to try and be as brief as possible. The fact remains that Councillor Lindley, I'm disappointed that he's not here today, because Councillor Lindley, of course, drew up, according to the Tory leadership, their proposals. He's never been to this council chamber to explain his proposals, and I'd rather hoped he would be here to explain the rationale behind some of their proposals today, but it doesn't appear that he wishes to share anything more with us. So this is a point of information.
Can I say that I find it quite annoying that Councillor Mary, Deputy Mayor, should go on about somebody who's actually working. You know, I mean, I'm really sorry, right, that people have to work and bring in a living, right? And I just think it's very, very awful. Are you going to say it about everybody else that's not here? Because I think it's a bit discourteous to him.
Well, I think it's discourteous that he's never been here to explain the proposals, or that the Conservative group never explained their proposals to this council. I think that's even more discourteous than any error I may have had, and so therefore I'd make no apology for pointing out that Councillor Lindley has never been in this council chamber. I appreciate he's been working, but he can't have been working every council meeting. He could have been here to explain his proposals and hasn't chosen to do so. And I'm a bit sad about that. And unfortunately, it was only because the Electoral Commission decided to publish the Conservative proposals that we ever got to actually see them. And as there is one proposal that came from the Conservative group, I thought he might have wanted to be here to discuss that. However, moving on, the fact remains that we are in general agreement, with two exceptions, with what the Commission has adopted, which is broadly the Council's proposals in most of the cases. However, there are two issues which we want to make further representations on, and that is the purpose of today's meeting. And if I can start with the Perrin Lane one, which is referred to in your report, right, I think it's very clear, talking to Councillor Lancaster and others who know this area extremely well, are very passionate about it. The motorway, when it was first built, was considered to be divisive, actually, by the community. Wasn't a natural boundary for the community, and still isn't a natural boundary for the community. And our proposal for Perrin Lane seems to us to make logical sense, and not just to us, but to many community organisations as well in this particular area. And we are recommending to this council meeting that we continue with our position on that and seek to persuade the Boundary Commission on that particular proposal. The second one is the Broughton-Kersal situation, where unfortunately the Electoral Commission's proposals do lead to a significant imbalance in terms of the wards, in terms of sizes. It doesn't really seem to me, as someone who knows the area very well, to make a great deal of logical sense, because we're talking about a boundary which is fairly ill-defined and actually splits up a community, rather than Northumberland Street, which has always been considered to be a very strong boundary in the area, and it makes logical sense in terms of the differences in the properties and so forth on either side. So we had another look at that. We had a look at the position of the Boundary Commission, which was that we'd gone too far past Manley Park in terms of the area, which they didn't really feel made logical sense. And we sought to adopt our proposal to ensure, first of all, a greater electoral equality between the two wards, which we think we've achieved with getting them both almost spot on 5%. And also in terms of looking at what they've already done, which is extend the boundary a little bit further north of Manley Park, and around the Tetlow Lane area. And we thought that it was logical to try and look for main roads and the city border to make a logical proposal to the Boundary Commission. So we're now proposing Dudley Street as the boundary. We are proposing that actually makes more sense. It does actually leave us with a greater degree of electoral equality, and it does actually, I think, fit in with the community. As is pointed out in the report, for example, there are many people in that area who attend institutions in the other ward, and it would make a degree of logic about it. I don't feel that this is something that we should spend a fantastic amount of time arguing about, but I do think it's a significant and important point that we try and use main roads, strong boundaries wherever possible that make sense to the community. Going down Welbeck and the like does not seem to me to make logic a logical alternative, and I therefore commend these proposals to the Council as our representation to the Boundary Commission.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Lancaster.
Well, I don't intend to take a long time on this, but I do want to support the view that Paddy Lane is with the border. I think it's crucial. Satara, which is the Tennyson Residents Association, has asked to come to speak. I've asked the questions to their council and he's stopped in doing so. And we've raised that 28 days notice was not given. Well, that's me to raise their concerns. Their main concern is one, they were opposed to the original Boundaries Commission report and on the whole still do. They would like to stay Winton as Winton, but that's not how it to be. And we've accepted that as a council that the new ward boundaries. The only point they would make is Paddy Lane has always had is the natural boundary, and the motorway, which the Boundaries Commission have used, is not the natural boundary. It causes real problems with the motorway there in the public's minds. But they call it, it's nicknamed and has been for years, Berlin Wall. No wonder anybody who knows it is quite frankly an eyesore and a blot on Winton's landscape. They're very proud on the work they've done as a village to keep Winton together on both sides of the motorway, and anything which makes it divisive, in our opinion, is wrong. One of the Tenants and Residents Association services the left-hand side of Panning Lane, which is the council estate, and the other one services G Lane, Weymouth Road, and Guildford and Montefield Road. So to separate them into different wards, in our opinion, would be wrong for the sake of just moving it over to Panning Lane as a natural boundary. So I'm supporting the recommendation.
House open. Councillor Robin Grado.
Thank you, sir. First of all, can I say that I would have thought it's not beyond the realms of possibility for everybody in this council chamber to have been able to read the Conservative proposals which were submitted to the Boundary Commission. I certainly don't think it needs to be brought back here again for everybody to read. So I'm quite clear that our proposals were extremely succinct. They were very clear. And in fact, I would add, in fact, that they actually made a good deal more sense than, in fact, the Council's proposals, or should I say the Labour Party's proposals, because that's what we're actually talking about. We intend to reinforce our original submission to the Boundary Commission. We see no reason to make any changes to the submission that we originally made. So we are writing to the Boundary Commission to reinforce those proposals. And I think it's interesting, in fact, that that when Councillor Merry talks about proper boundaries, that ignores the fact that in the Labour Party, sorry, the Council's proposals, that you have the East Lancs dividing wards, which is you know, as good as a motorway, and yet when it comes to the M602, it seems to be a different story altogether. So you seem to be wearing two hats. In one way, you're quite happy to cross the M602, and another, you criticise the M602 as being one of the boundaries. I think as far as the Conservative proposals are concerned, they were rather more in line, in our opinion, with the Boundary Commission's terms of reference. In other words, in a majority of cases, we were below the 5% variance, which was, in fact, one of the terms of reference. I think in only one or two cases were we, in fact, between the 5 and maximum of 10%. So we were rather surprised that the Boundary Commission chose to accept the Council's proposals, which, in fact, had a greater variance than the Conservative proposals. I'd just add, in fact, on the Conservative proposals, that we feel we took far more account of community of interest. And I'll just make one example, in fact, between Roe Green, Booztown and Worsley. There is no way with anybody who knows the area accept that Roe Green had more in common with Booztown than it did with Worsley Village. And yet you see a separation there, just tacking on Roe Green to Booztown as if it was just really making up the numbers. And I think that's what it looks like to most local people, that they're just trying to make up the numbers by tacking it on to Booztown. The same applies to Warton Road, Crossfield Drive, Leckingfield Drive and all that area, just being tacked on to Boothstown Ellenbrook to make up the numbers. And I don't think that's any way to actually draw up ward boundaries. The main thing that the Conservative proposals did, as I say, community of interest was one thing. The other thing, in fact, was to make sure, wherever possible, that town centres appeared within a particular ward or particular group of wards. And we did that. We certainly did that with Wartburton, we did that with Swinton, and so on. And again, that seems to have been ignored. I don't really think I need to go on very much more, but just to say that we won't be supporting the Council's proposals because we don't believe they make sense. We didn't believe they made sense previously. We think that so far the Boundary Commission have been misguided in accepting that. And I think we will be making it clear to the Boundary Commission that these, in fact, were very much one-sided proposals and were not supported by the whole council.
You see that bit there? Why would you not take that line across there?
Thank you. Councillor Saunders.
Can I just say, it's not my place to speak on behalf of Councillor Lindley, but I would just simply say that our reasons for our proposals, yes, it's true, for whatever reason, was not brought to the Council. I don't think we had an obligation to do that, but was made very clear in our submission to the Boundary Commission. Councillor Merry sort of makes out that the Boundary Commission just happened to decide to publish the proposals and therefore it became in the public domain. We knew very well that was what they were going to do, and we therefore assumed that once it would reach the Boundary Commission, it would be in the public domain. What we did last time was simply voted against the Labour Party submission into making that council policy, but there was no secrets as to what our recommendation was, or even the reasons behind it, which obviously have not changed. In terms of Kersal, obviously I'm qualified to speak on Kersal and Broughton. I've no intention on speaking on any other part of the proposals. But in terms of Kersal and Broughton, I would simply say this, that our proposals, we stand by our original proposals. We simply felt that our proposals took into account the fact that it was a homogenous community. For example, there were shops, as you well know, Councillor Merry, right down Leicester Road, which we felt would make a sort of more natural boundary. Neil Watts, in his written report on the Boundary Commission, said that the Boundary Commission have basically adopted the Conservative Party proposals for the Kersal-Broughton ward with a small alteration. I don't think I would have put it like that. I would have put it that they actually compromised between the Conservative proposals and the Labour proposals. But that said, having studied the proposals, we will... in fact, we are not objecting particularly to the proposals of the Boundary Commission, but we still prefer our original ones, but we would not, we actually think that the ones that have been proposed today, the revised proposals by the Labour Party, actually are slightly less, make slightly less homogenous community, and is actually slightly arbitrary when you look on the map. Thank you, Chair.
There are no other further questions or comments. Councillors asked to endorse the draft. I'm sorry, yes. I didn't indicate that you wanted to report. Thanks.
I want to report to this council that in fact the Mayor did write to the leader of the Conservative group after the last council meeting asking them to make his proposals public so that they could be subject to public scrutiny before the Boundary Commission decided to publish them. Is that not a fact? Yes, it is a fact. Sorry?
They're made public.
Yes, they were made public after they were submitted. I would have thought that far from accusing us of being secretive and manipulative, sorry, is this a point of information?
Councillor Murray is accusing us of being secretive. This is a public consultation. The Conservative proposals within a matter of days of the council meeting were published by the Boundary Commission. There's nothing secret about them. They were published and every member of the public, including members of the council, had an opportunity to look at them and still do.
Well, he's got an interesting definition of what secretive actually means. Can I just remind you, and it'll be there in the transcript, that we challenged them at the actual last council meeting to make those proposals public. They declined to do so. Following that meeting, the Mayor wrote to the leader of the Conservative group, right, a letter which has seemed to be conveniently ignored by Councillor Garrido in his submission to us just now, asking him to make them public. He declined to do so. They were only made public after being submitted to the Boundary Commission. There was no opportunity for public debate before they were submitted, unlike our party and the council, which made our proposals public, which enabled the Conservatives to see our proposals and to comment on them before they submitted their proposal. So I'm afraid they are guilty of being secretive over this. The fact that the Boundary Commission published those proposals is neither here nor there. They could have joined us in a genuine debate and a genuine discussion. Who knows, we might have been able to get a consensus about the proposals. As it stands, we've been just accused of having too much variance in our proposals for wards. And yet, the Conservative proposal leads to an imbalance between Kersal Ward and Broughton Ward as admitted by the Boundary Commission. Did they choose to alter their proposals as a result? Apparently not. Our proposals leads to basically being almost spot on 5% in terms of the variance. So I would submit that ours are more logical than the Conservative group, particularly in following strong boundaries. Councillor Garrido says that we don't always follow strong boundaries. Well, no, we can't always follow it, but we can if we actually want to achieve electoral equality, and that's precisely what these proposals do. So I'm sorry, I don't accept the argument that somehow because the Boundary Commission published their proposals, that was somehow their version of public consultation. Ours have been in the public domain since the council meeting, in fact before the council meeting. The Conservatives declined to make a submission to this council so that we could have a proper debate and be subject to public scrutiny, and I would suggest that they're probably going to do the same and actually send their proposals directly to the Boundary Commission without giving the public the opportunity to comment on it. I move the report.
Information.
You didn't stand to say you're a point of information. If you have, therefore, it's out of the Constitution and that you are not statements because you didn't stand.
Apologise. The council is asked to endorse the draft supplemental response to the warding pattern recommended by LGBCE. That has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, show of hands. Okay. All those against? has been overwhelmingly passed. Before, it's against the Constitution. I haven't got the powers of... Oh, you got fun?
You've had the vote on the
Yeah, we've had the vote. I haven't got the powers to allow it otherwise. That's been already passed. And as we are now finishing, we thought it would be 30 minutes, and in fact, we've done quite well. I'd like to wish you all a happy Christmas and a New Year, which it's a difficult one. I have not a political. I cannot say prosperous, but I'm hoping that we will have that we learn to live with each other and have a happy New Year. Thank you, and declare the meeting closed.
For all members' information, a policy forum will start in 5 minutes' time.
5 or 10 minutes.